Hey everybody, and welcome back to BK's Bullets. Today we're going to do a definitive reading order of Azrael. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I am your host, Brent, and today I thought we'd do something a little different and do a definitive reading order of a character. So, I chose my semi-favorite character. My real favorite is my main man, Batman, back here. But my second favorite character is this guy on my t-shirt right here. This is Azrael. This is the avenging angel of Saint Dumas, of the Order of Saint Dumas, or Dumas, however you want to call it. So, I figured I would do a definitive reading order since I have most of his appearances, at least every single collected edition trade paperback up to the New 52 reboot. So I figured we would do that. Now don't worry, I will not forget his post New 52 stuff. I don't have that in trade, but I will throw it up here on the screen and we will talk about it as we go through that. So everything will be covered here as the end of 2021, basically, in his reading order here. So first thing you need to know, and I'm picking up the book, so if I lean forward in the video, that's what you're looking at. This is where you start, Sword of Azrael. Now, this is an older copy. You got the classic DC logo up here. This contains Sword of Azrael 1 through 4. If you can't find this particular one, which might be a little bit hard, you can pick up the Azrael Fallen Angel Volume 1, which we will be pulling out a little bit later. But to start off with Azrael, you just start right here. This is the beginning of the story. This is the character created by Denny O'Neil and Joe Quesada, and Joe Quesada draws all 4 of these issues, and they're quite phenomenal. I really like this story. It is, all in all, is it a game-changing story for Batman? No, it's really just a fun little story introducing this new character of Azrael, and drawn by a phenomenal artist, written by a phenomenal writer, and it kind of just introduces you to his world. What is strange about this, though, is that this came out in the early 90s, in 1992. And if you're reading this book, you may notice that the art is of a certain quality. It's fantastic. You may notice the coloring is of a certain quality. It is also fantastic. They're utilizing computerized coloring in this book. You can tell because of the fades, because of the shading, like this laser beam here. Image was doing a lot of that at the time. Now, when we go to our next book here, this is the Prelude to Nightfall Volume 1. Right here, you will open it up and you will notice that this does not have computerized coloring. This is the flat, classic coloring of the 70s and 80s and stuff like that. So you'll notice a little bit of a difference as we go through here. So why did I pick up Prelude to Nightfall? Well, obviously Nightfall does have Jean-Paul Valley in it, and that's why I'm including it. And because it is important to note that when you go from Sword of Azrael, at some point in time, Batman kind of takes Jean-Paul Valley under his wing and says, come train with me. And some of those training issues, not really Batman training him, but him with Robin as this guy right here with the A suit, actually turned right to it, which is nice, is in this trade paperback here. So this is the 25th anniversary edition of Nightfall, this trade paperback right here. You can find these out and about. You might also find the gosh, what's it called? The big soft cover omnibus or whatever, and there are 3 of those. You can pick those up. There's also a hardcover omnibus that has this material in it. I'm not sure if the soft cover has it in there at all. But there are a couple of issues here where our hero, Jean-Paul Valley, does appear in this kind of weird Azrael costume. He's got a big A on it. Robin's saying, look out, as if he's Azrael, although he does not wear the red costume that we all know and love. And I think the reason for that is they kind of explain it a little bit in this, but they definitely do in the Sword of Azrael book, is that when he wears the red costume, his classic costume, his conditioning is kicked in. He is born from a very young age to be conditioned to be a martial artist, a killer, And when he wears that costume, his conditioning kicks in. It's almost as if he becomes a different person. So they're trying to take that vicious killer out, and therefore they do not let him wear that costume. So because of the events of Prelude to Nightfall, we have to immediately read Nightfall Volume 1. And while Jean Paul Valley I have read this recently. I can't remember exactly if he's in here or not, but I think it is important to read in the reading order of Azrael, because you are finding out what is happening to Batman in order that, that puts Jean Paul Valley in the place he's in. If you do not read Nightfall Volume 1, you will not understand the next book, Nightfall Volume 2. So if Jean Paul Valley doesn't show up in here at all, please forgive me, but it is imperative that you read Nightfall Volume 1 before you read Volume 2, because this has Bane breaking the Batman. And you will not understand how or why then Batman, in Batman 500 here, Jean Paul Valley at the very end goes and beats the shit out of Bane in his new costume, that why that is important. And the Nightfall saga sets all of that up. So with Nightfall Volume 2, this is has the first couple issues. Bruce is broken, and then you see him like rehabilitating. You see him kind of say to Jean Paul Valley that he needs to become the next Batman, not Dick Grayson. And it's kind of a weird thing because Jean Paul Valley, at least in this reading order, you don't really know who he is. You've read Sword of Azrael, and then he all of a sudden shows up in this Prelude. You don't really get a sense that he is like a proper replacement. This is him right here in the white t-shirt, or in the white button-up here, looking like a hospital orderly. So he puts on the Bat costume, right? I think for the first time here in Shadow of the Bat, number 16. And this is drawn by, I think it's Brent Blevins. Yep, written by Alan Grant, covered by Brian Stelfreeze. There's some phenomenal art in these Nightfall volumes, especially when we get further into the Night Quest storyline with Jean Paul Valley. So this has a lot of him like in the regular Batman costume. He's kind of slowly going insane. And then eventually he creates the launchers, which are the gauntlets of the Asbats costume, and goes up against Bane. And it isn't until the very final issue that he debuts his new costume, which is designed by Joe Quesada, I believe, and because there's some designs back here by Joe Quesada. But it's drawn by Mike Manley, who becomes the new regular artist on the Bat book. And then we kind of have the future version of what eventually we'll see in Detective. I think it's like 675, 775, which is my favorite version of the Asbats costume because it's so fucking wild and kooky. So from here, you stay in the Nightfall saga. You go directly to Night Quest Volume 1. This is The Crusade Volume 1, basically. So there are 3 volumes of these 25th anniversary trades that say Batman Night Quest. This is The Crusade Part 1. There's a Part 2. We will talk about that also. But this is the entire collection, the entire adventure of Azrael as Batman. And this is when you start to see him go kind of mad, where they introduce the ghost of his father, the ghost of Saint Dumas, who are always talking to him. There's some great stories in here with the Tallyman. Gunhawk makes an appearance in the 2nd volume. So these are all great stories. This first volume mainly has him, it has him in the first version of his costume all the way through. It isn't until the 2nd volume that we actually see some iteration. Now this is like his final form, I would call it. But there is some iteration where he does, in Shadow of the Bat number 25, he fights the Corrosive Man. And I had this issue. I think I still have it somewhere. One of the few single issues I still have. And basically designs this new mask, now that his mask has been melted away, that has these cool kind of face plates on it and stuff like that. And this is the debut here, right here. This is personally my favorite version. I like the regular cape rather than the bladed cape, but I love that we actually finally introduced the bat symbol back onto Batman's chest. I love that here. So this has him go insane. You have this pivotal issue, I think it's 505, where he goes up against Abattoir, lets Abattoir die, and then Robin and all those guys see it. Here's Gunhawk. I love this guy. This is the issue here where Abattoir dies. He lets Graham, what's his name guy, his cousin, Robin sees it, and then it's kind of like, oh shit, this guy's gone insane. We really need to pick it out, or take him out, take him down. So, and it's this final issue. What is this issue? Detective Comics 675. See, I knew the number. Where he actually gets the bladed costume, and that's like, you know, the blade cape, which he turns into a shield when because he's going up against Gunhawk, which is kind of cool. He like flings it all around him and stuff, and that's that. So, kind of not necessary, but also maybe you do want to read it, is this one. This is Night Quest: The Search. It does not... It does have Jean-Paul Valley in it, so you do want to read it for that. It is part of the Azrael storyline, but it's mostly about Bruce Wayne getting his mojo back, getting his back fixed. So there might be an appearance or two of Jean-Paul Valley, but he certainly appears at the end of this volume, which might be the only critical issue to read, this one, Robin number 7 here, where Bruce finally shows back up and says, I'm going to take back the mantle, and talks to Robin, and sets up the inevitable showdown of what we will call Night's End. And this is the next volume you want to pick up. This is my favorite story. My favorite issue of this, of course, the Climax, Dark Knight, or Legends of the Dark Knight number 60, drawn by Barry Kitson. And then, so this you have Batman going up against Azbats or Azrael, and then eventually somehow he's on fire, and he gets dropped down in the Blade costume, gets on fire. He drops down into the water, and when he comes back out of the water, it's all red. And because it's all, for some reason, you know, comes back all red. It's never really explained, but it's just a color change. I guess the blue on blue maybe was confusing for some readers. And I've seen some other people try and explain it on some of my other Nightfall videos, and I don't really buy their explanation. But in any case, it still looks cool as hell. And then we have Batman take back the mantle of the Bat in Legends of the Dark Knight number 63. Can't believe I got the number wrong. So after that, you have some epilogue issues where Batman comes back and Jean-Paul Valley is no longer in the picture. But what's also included here is this Showcase 94 number 10. This is a cover by Joe Quesada, and this kind of shows what happens to Jean-Paul Valley after he's Batman. He's kind of homeless. He's beating up on some people, and they're like, hey, why are you beating up on me? You know, and that's kind of it for that. A short time later, you have his first series, and you can go read that here in Azrael. This is the Fallen Angel trade right here, Volume 1, Fallen Angel. Unfortunately, this is the one and only volume that was ever collected. This contains Sword of Azrael 1 through 4, and Azrael does also contain Showcase 94 number 10, which I just talked about, and Azrael, his first series, 1 through 7. So this is like, you know, I don't know if they were going to do a whole line of these. I got real excited if they were. But the problem is this regular series of Azrael has 100 issues. So if you were to do all 100 issues, you'd probably need 8, 9, 10 volumes. And the other thing that's unfortunate about this book is that like the paper quality is nice. It's pretty glossy. Sword of Azrael does look great on this paper as well as the original trade paperback that I have. The problem is when you get into the regular Azrael issues, sometimes the scans are like a little wonky. Like Barry Kitson is doing the art here, and the art looks fine, but I don't know if this was the way it was printed originally. It looks kind of fuzzy at some points. But this does have him go up and finally find the Order of Saint-Dumas. He meets this character Lily. He meets this new father, and they're kind of getting together. And then figuring out that the Order of Saint-Dumas is kind of not really who a nice guy, you know, they're not nice people. And so Azrael is trying to also survive because there's another guy who wants to take his place. So that kind of happens in here. And then him and Lily escape, and they kind of also encounter, they're setting up the next encounter with Ra's al Ghul, with the Demon Biss, whom you met in Sword of Azrael number 4, who's kind of Azrael's first villain, maybe you'd call it. But this is a really nice presentation. This is Azrael number 1 here. That's the cover. So, unfortunately, there are no more collected editions of Azrael with Jean-Paul Valley at the forefront at all. This is the one and only one, and this came out in, I want to say it was like 2016. It was a couple of years ago. Compilation 2016. There you go. So no sign of a volume 2. I don't think we'll ever get it. I guess this did not sell well at all. I recently saw these at an Ollie's, and for like, you know, $2 or $3, and I was like, man, what a great find for people who love Azrael. But that seems to be only me, and this video may never go anywhere, but oh well. You know what, we should call this video Azrael Podcast number 1, because there is an Azrael Podcast Twitter account who's been promising a podcast for the longest time, but it's nowhere in sight. So fuck it, we might as well call this Azrael Podcast Volume 1 number 1 as well, to tell you where to go read Azrael. So next book up, Batman Contagion. Yes, this does contain an issue or 2 of Azrael, and our hero Jean-Paul Valley does play a significant and important role in this crossover here. Here's the issue of Azrael. And he's basically going after, there's this virus in Gotham called, oh gosh, what is it called? It has a terrible name. But anyway, it makes people like bleed out really bad, like this guy right here. And they're going to find it, and Azrael is on the, you know, he gets sent on the case with Catwoman, who is wearing this white costume. I think he's also talking to Oracle at the time. So he goes and helps out with the case, and then it kind of goes back to Batman for the rest of the crossover, and you don't really see Azrael until the very end. The Demon Abyss is back here, so there is some stuff with Azrael, but it's not an Azrael crossover by any chance. But it does kind of like tie everything together. So he's mildly important in this crossover. I thought that was pretty cool. He's in the middle of his run. This has, let's see if we can find the issues in here. I mean, it starts off with like an issue of Azrael, like not an issue of Azrael, but Azrael's like literally on the first page talking to Batman. So that's pretty cool for an Azrael fan like you or myself. Here we go. This has Azrael 15 to 16. This is pretty early on in the run. They were incorporating him into the crossovers. Now, for another 30 issues or so, there's no sign of Azrael in collections anywhere. You can go pick up those single issues. You can go read them on DC Universe. You can Infinite. You can go and read them on Comixology, but they're not collected anywhere. The next collected edition that has Azrael is this one right here, and now we're getting into my favorite Batman crossover ever. This is the Cataclysm No Man's Land saga. So I have a bookmark in here for where he appears, because he kind of appears very quickly. And I want to talk about this issue that's here. It is, I think it's number 40. Let me open it up, the table of contents, to make sure. Yeah, Azrael number 40 is the only issue in here. But it is cool because it's an entire issue of Azrael. And if you were reading the book before then, you would know that Azrael had been fighting Bane again for the second time. And there's like a 3 or 4 issue arc where they're like doing this long drawn out brawl, and Azrael's trying to bring him back to Gotham when the earthquake happens, and Bane basically escapes because of this earthquake. And then Azrael kind of goes in to save some people. I think I flipped past the end of that issue. You know, and still captures his man. That's pretty cool. But it's basically saying like, this is the, you know, the aftermath of the quake. You know where Azrael is. He is fighting Bane. And that's the last you see of him in this book. This is a phenomenal book. Don't just read it for the Azrael issue. I mean, this story overall is pretty fucking awesome. So definitely check it out. Next, and this is probably the most significant collection for Jean-Paul Valley here. This is Batman Road to No Man's Land Volume 2. You'll notice I skipped Volume 1. There's no Azrael in it at all, so we don't need to mention it whatsoever. But this is significant because Azrael takes a major role in this volume. I want to say like a good quarter of the issues are Azrael issues. Starting off with Agent of the Bat 47. I think it goes all the way to number 50. So there's like a good 4 issues in here. And it introduces this character of Nicholas Scratch, who is kind of he's in the No Man's Land crossover, and he's kind of the guy that helped convince the government not to reinstate Gotham after the quake and bail them out with funds and money and all this other stuff. But he's slowly, like, you think he's going to become a Batman foe, and Batman's just like, Azrael, you go deal with him. So every issue, most of the issues you see of Azrael in this No Man's Land crossover is him going up against Nicholas Scratch or some other, you know, sometimes he goes up against the Joker, I believe. But these first couple issues is basically the introduction of this main character, this new villain, Nicholas Scratch, who I haven't read all the Azrael issues, big Azrael fan I am, but Scratch stays around for the next 50 issues or so and plays a role in Jean Paul Valley's solo series after this. So, pretty interesting thing here. A big note here is the last issue, number 50. In this one, it's called Resurrection. And this is where Azrael gets his second costume right here. And it's designed by Batman, who basically tells him, hey, you can't wear your classic Azrael suit because people think you killed a senator. So I'm going to give you this new one. And this new one sticks around for a little while. And even though Azrael is wearing this other costume, he finally puts it on. So when you see Azrael for the next couple issues in the trades, he no longer has his classic costume. Somehow the conditioning still works, as you'll find out in later issues of that. But this is the Azrael costume he's rocking throughout No Man's Land and into Officer Down, which we will get to a little bit later. So you can read more of Azrael in all 4 volumes of No Man's Land. I've kind of highlighted, you know, where these starts here. This was an interesting story. It's got so this is an interesting story. This has Azrael just wandering the streets of Gotham City during the No Man's Land in his new suit. He comes across Leslie Tompkins, who he's kind of like protecting her little medical camp for a little while here, and so he intersects with Huntress and stuff like that. But this story is kind of interesting because it's just him saving one person at a time, at the same time as going up against Nicholas Scratch's goons who are trying to get into the city. So inside these No Man's Land volumes, Azrael is in here. He is doing some stuff, but overall it's not about Azrael, but it is cool to know that, hey, these are collected. Also, weird thing, I'm not sure about DC Universe Infinite, but I know on Comixology, these issues of Azrael following number 50 throughout the end of No Man's Land they have not been digitized or something like that. Like, they're not on Comixology, but you could read them if you bought the trades on Comixology, which is kind of weird. These No Man's Land trades, these ones are kind of hard to find right now, as are probably most of the trades I have here. Good luck. Some of these are going for over cover price or double cover price. I know I picked up, I think, the original Cataclysm one for like $60. They normally run for 40. I mean, you see price gougers everywhere saying, oh, this trade's out of print, so it must be worth double to somebody who really wants it. I never try and pay double for a trade, that's for sure, or even more than that. Try and stay around cover price, in my mind. So, Volume 2, next appearance of Azrael. This has a couple issues in here. This is where there's actually like 2 issues in a row. The nice part about these No Man's Land trades is that they collect their storylines together. So if there's a Azrael cliffhanger like this one here, it goes into the next issue of Azrael with him against Nicholas Scratch, and they kind of force him to put on the costume. And then he's also kind of working with Batgirl on this one because he's been tasked by Batman to take down Nicholas Scratch over here. So that's pretty cool. I think that is it for him in that volume. Alright, let's go to him in No Man's Land Volume 3. This is where Azrael, I think, is going up against the Joker at some point. He's still with Leslie Tompkins. I'm showing other stuff here. Here's the Ghost of Saint Dumas making another appearance, kind of like reminding you that Azrael's still kind of insane. This is another person he's saving. He's trying to get him out of the city and over to a safe place. So just little touches here and there. Azrael is doing stuff in No Man's Land. He's not just never making an appearance. So it's nice that they didn't forget about him in the crossovers. Here in Volume 4, you know, again, not a main character, but he does have an important role to play. So in this one, Azrael is saving... I've read all these really recently. That's why I'm so good about remembering what the hell is going on. But basically, he's trying to get this disc from Catwoman, who has the backup, basically, of all the land ownership in Gotham. And so he's saving Catwoman here. And you get an issue of Azrael that shows it. There's an issue of Catwoman that shows it. There's even like another issue of Batman that shows the same damn story. It gets told 3 times, 3 different ways. It's kind of annoying. But I think that is maybe one of the last appearances. Oh, no, I'm wrong. And then the other thing you get 3 different times, or kind of out of place, is this final attack with Azrael and Batgirl defending Mercy, Lex Luthor's person at the Christmas tree. So you get that a little bit later. There's this nice moment with Batgirl down here. Yeah. So, moving on. We are getting closer and closer to the end of Jean Paul Valley. There is no issue of Azrael here in this old, ancient Batman Officer Down trade, but he does make an appearance. Hell, he even gets cover placement. Check him out right there. Of course, he's not in the classic costume. So again, there's no issue of Azrael in here, but he is included as part of the Bat family because of all the work he did in No Man's Land and all that. He is, you know, part of the Batman family and kind of included over the next 2 crossovers, which is nice. So he's working with the team in here, trying to track down killers, working with Nightwing, fighting bad guys, all that sort of stuff. So if you want to read this, you can throw it in there. I think you certainly can. And then with that, things for Jean Paul Valley start looking a little dark, a little grim. So I want to bring up this book right here. This is Bruce Wayne Murderer. This is the new trade. This was previously collected in a few different ways, but there is no Azrael in this at all. But I say, if you want to read his appearance in Batman Fugitive, you need to know why Bruce Wayne is a fugitive and maybe why Azrael is acting the way he is, because all this lays that out. Basically, Bruce Wayne is framed for murder and decides that Bruce Wayne is no longer an identity worth keeping. He's giving up on it, and he's just going to be Batman. So here you have issues of Azrael in here, 91 and 92. So we've already jumped 40 issues in time in terms of where we saw him in the No Man's Land crossover. And Azrael's gone through some stuff. He's not in his classic costume. He's not in his new costume. For some odd reason, which I can't recall, he is in a version of the Azbat's costume. This right here, yes, it is a drawing of Azrael by Brian motherfucking Boland. Look at it in all its glory. He was doing the covers to, I think, Gotham Knights at the time. So this is an issue of Batman Gotham Knights, I believe. Drawn by Roger Robinson, who I think had also done some work on Azrael as well, before moving over to this title. So you have Azrael in this Batman costume, basically. And he's fighting bad guys, and he goes up against Nightwing. He's kind of going crazy at this point again. Like, this is a downward slope for Azrael for Jean Paul Valley before he, you know, disappears or whatever in issue 100. And then he actually has a showdown with Batman. Here's the Ghost of Saint Dumas again. Coming down over here. Is this in it? I wonder if this is actually an issue of Azrael instead of... Nope, this is Gotham Knights. And then we go directly into Azrael, Agent of the Bat here. And here we go. Here's Sergio Carrillo, who is the artist at the time through the end of the series. So they're trying to stop him from choking out Azrael. He's kind of got this weird costume on. Everybody draws it a little bit differently, it seems. But that's fine. So he's just fighting Batman in this one, and then they kind of stop, and that's kind of where you leave it off. And this might as well be the end of Azrael as you know it. This is the last appearance of him in collected edition format of Jean Paul Valley. So there's a couple more issues of his own series after this one, 92. His series ends with issue 100 with Azrael, Jean Paul Valley's apparent death, and then you kind of never hear anything about him again. So, where are we going next? Well, we are going to this trade right here. This is Azrael Death's Dark Knight, which was the start, basically, of the second Azrael, Michael Lane, who had first appeared in Batman and Son, that trade paperback. Now, I didn't include that here, not only because I don't have it physically, I have it digitally, but I went back and reread some of those issues to see if there was any real information. It's not really until the end of that story of Batman and Son that, like, Tony Daniels drawing the issues. This is where Dr. Hurt finally makes an appearance, and you find out that Michael Lane is the masked Batman. But they just tell you he's a cop, and that's it. So his backstory really is told just fine in the first issue of this 3-issue miniseries, which is drawn by Fraser Irving, and that is a phenomenal, phenomenal cover artist. This is Galen March doing the cover here. But Fraser Irving is doing the interiors. That is our new Azrael, Michael Lane. He's wearing something called the Suit of Sorrows, which you can go and check out in the Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul storyline. And then you can follow that Suit of Sorrows storyline into Paul Dini's Detective Comics run. And then it comes over to here to this Azrael, Michael Lane, who is our new Azrael as we know it. So he has two swords, like one is a flaming sword and one is like a blue sword. Michael Lane has his own action figure. And since he's a cop, he's also the Azrael that you would have found at the time in the Batman games, Arkham City and Arkham Knight. So he makes an appearance there. So, but post New 52, he never makes an appearance again. So he's kind of never Azrael again. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. What's also in this trade is like a crossover with Batman and Detective in their annuals, where they were introducing the new Azrael again with art by Tom Mandrake. I think Fabian Nicieza is writing all this. It's a fun little storyline, but again, different take on Azrael. Mostly about like a Templar cross imagery, and not really about the gold and the red and all the cool colors we've had for a while. No flaming, sword blades on his hands or anything, but you do get a flaming sword. And the sword is like one is Hellfire, one is Purity, or something like that. It's interesting. So I was reading this in single issues at the time, and I thought it was interesting. And then I started reading this one, and this has Azrael Volume 2, issues 1 through 6. This is Azrael, Angel in the Dark, and look at this beautiful cover. Oh, gorgeous. I think this is Francesco Mattina. Yeah, he's doing the covers to these issues here. Except for the first one. The first one is by Jock, and it's pretty fucking terrible, I think, in my humble opinion. Not one of the best Jock covers here. This one right here. But anyway, so this continues the adventures of Azrael number 2, Michael Lane. And what's weird here is the art is done by Ramon Box, who I did like on City of Crime when he was doing a run on Detective Comics previously. But here, the colorist or something and Ramon Box just did not gel for me. And not only that, he kind of ditches the first couple of issues. Like, they established that Azrael is wearing the Suit of Sorrows armor, which is white. And then for whatever reason, the colorist decides to color Azrael in just this, like, brown tunic, which just makes him look like he crawled out of a dumpster. So that is kind of weird here. This contains the first 6 issues. So this is technically Volume 1 of this, like, new Azrael collection. The weird part is that there was a second collection with issues 7 through 13 solicited. I think it was called, not Judgment, something about sinners and saints and killers, killers and saints, something like that. There was an ISBN number for it, but apparently it was never printed. I've searched online everywhere, and apparently that's the last information that I found, that book was never printed. So it does not exist. So don't tell me that it exists unless you can actually mail me a physical version, which I will not give back to you if you do. But that never came out. But you can finish Michael Lane's adventure in this book right here. This is Batman Gotham Shall Be Judged. This is another trade paperback that is very, very hard to find. And it was very, very pricey. It goes for $20, but I think I paid $35 for it. Again, I didn't go over double cover price, but I wanted to have this final Azrael adventure. So what is weird here, though, is that you have Azrael, and there's art by Gilliam Marchand here, and some other pretty phenomenal artists. I think Cliff Edwards on here? Cliff Richards. And then there's a crossover with all the regular Batman titles at the time, with Red Robin, Detective Comics, all these other guys. But this is the closeout, basically, of Azrael Volume 2. So you have the last couple of issues of that here, and then it goes into the crossover with Batman, where you kind of see Michael Lane kind of just disappear off into the ether. And I say this collection is weird because it introduces this character with the cross on it, like, burned into his face. I'm trying to find a picture of him in here. But he appeared in other... This is the guy right here. This Templar guy. The other Templar guy. He appeared in the Saints and Killers arc in 7 through 13 of Azrael Volume 2, but they never collected it, so I'm not sure if you're going to pick up Azrael Volume 1 and then pick this up. If you do find them at all, and might not make sense. So there are some missing issues here to the story. I think it's a complete bummer that they're not collected anywhere, because basically all they would need to do is finish this out and they could have, you know, a complete run. Or better yet, they could do a massive Azrael Volume 2, you know, book, include all this stuff in there, throw in 7 through 13. It would be pretty big, but you could do it all in one fell swoop. I mean, you're talking about 25 issues or something like that. Maybe you do it in 2 volumes, or forget the Death's Dark Knight stuff and just start from here to here and leave in the crossover. That's just me. So, with the end of Azrael Volume 2, that ends our run with Michael Lane as Azrael. He kind of floats off into the ether at the end of this book, and that is the end of the story there. So, after that, we have the New 52. The complete reboot of the DC Universe, no mention of Jean Paul Valley at all. And then, a few years later, you have Batman and Robin Eternal come out. So this is the second weekly Batman crossover. I'm going to put an image up here next to me of Volume 1 and Volume 2. And Jean Paul Valley, a reinvigorated, renewed, all brand new take on the character, appears in Volume 1 towards the end with this new Order of Saint Dumas. And then also is in Volume 2, so you can check him out there in Volume 1 and 2 of Batman and Robin Eternal. I thought they were okay. I thought they weren't that bad. The next place you can go find him is in James Tynion IV's Detective Comics run. This is the Rebirth Era, so this basically takes that idea of Azrael and brings him into the Batman team for the first time, and this new character of Jean Paul Valley is now a main member of the Detective Comics Gotham Knights team, whatever you want to call it. And they actually do like another version of the Azbat suit, and they bring it back. So it's kind of this weird, like, wait, we just met Jean Paul Valley a little bit ago, and then wait, now we're talking about the Saint Dumas having this weird intelligence called Ascalon, and then you're going to bring this Azbat's version of the costume. Like, James Tynion IV is my age, so it's plainly clear that he's an Azrael fan there as well. So he's there. That series kind of ends. James Tynion moves on. Azrael moves on. And the next place you can find Azrael Jean Paul Valley is in this kind of odd series called Justice League Odyssey. So this came out of the No Justice event. Scott Snyder had launched Justice League, and then you had Justice League Odyssey over here with Stefan Sejic on art, who does the art for the first couple of issues. And I was picking this up, and then it kind of fell off the rails. So here you have a version of Azbat's Azrael here. They call him Azrael. But he's wearing this golden Batman armor, which kind of looks cool sometimes when you draw it and sometimes not. And then he kind of falls away as a character. Like, it follows Jessica Cruz for a while because the main characters got taken over by Darkseid. And then by the time the book ends, like, this entire thing I think is collected right now. I want to say it's like 4 volumes. But by the time the book ends, Azrael's not really a main character of the book at all. It's all about Jessica Cruz and the new heroes that she found in this weird section of the galaxy to fight, taking over Cyborg, taking over Starfire, and taking over Azrael. So that is that. So that is basically the last place you can find Azrael in Collected Edition. He started to pop up again in Batman Urban Legends. I think the latest issue of that, as when this video was published, has the start of a 3-part Azrael story, so that is cool. I don't know if those will be collected in the future. There's also a Legends of the Dark Knight digital short that was featured with this new version of Azrael, so it's not quite clear what version they're going with our main man Jean Paul Valley anymore. So we kind of left in the air, you know. I would like to see him become a main character again and see what they could do with him. I liked what they were doing with him in Batman and Robin Eternal, that new fresh take, but it seems that all that again with the not with Rebirth, but with Infinite Frontier, you know, everything is its own everything is the same thing again. So Bane, all that stuff, the first long half of this video I went through is all back in continuity. And Jean Paul Valley is somehow apparently still alive after disappearing or dying at the end of issue 100 of his own series. So I don't really know what happens. Everybody apparently in the DC universe knows that their universe has been messed with, so that's kind of where we leave it with that. So let me know down below what you want to see with Azrael on this channel. Again, this has been BK's Bullets, but for for fuck's sake, we're going to call this Azrael Podcast Episode 1, just to spite the Azrael Podcast Twitter account that hasn't actually posted an episode of the podcast. So, if they see this episode, just let me know. It is in jest, and I will be a guest on your next episode if you actually do release that thing. But let me know, get in the comments down below if you like Azrael or not. Is this a stupid gesture? Is this dumb? No one cares about this character, that kind of shit. Just put all that shit down there, and we will see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.